Justin West from Podcast Portugal. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Anna Sosdian. She is one of the co-founders with Zach Gerth of StartAbroad. StartAbroad is a full-service international relocation company launched after the pair experienced 12 international relocations between them. And since founding the company in 2021, they've helped hundreds of individuals and families navigate the complex process of moving abroad, with Portugal, becoming one of their most popular destinations. Anna, you've collectively a warm welcome. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Where are we talking to you? Are you in the US right now or in Portugal?
I am not in the US right now. So we actually help people move to multiple countries.
Okay.
So I bounce around between them. At the moment, I'm in Costa Rica.
Oh, you're so lucky. Very nice. Excellent. And so, I've read that you've collectively relocated internationally like 12 times. What inspired you to turn those experiences into StartAbroad?
Well, so in my previous life, I worked for international NGOs and organizations, and I moved for jobs. And I actually worked in international HR. So I was the one then also helping other employees make these big moves to countries they knew nothing about and where they had to basically arrive in the country and get productive and working at a new job like very quickly, right? So when you're working for an organization, that means that the company is finding your housing, getting your car, obviously making sure that the visa is all set up and ready to go, but so many other pieces to make sure that you can just arrive and immediately start your new life. And the most recent move that I did, actually, I wasn't doing it for a job. It was Zach and I decided, you know what, we want to move to a country just because we want to be there. It's not going to be for a job. It's going to be because we love that place. And when we were doing that, we're like, you know what, when you do this by yourself, there's no company support. You have to figure out so many little things on your own, in addition to the big things that you know about. So we thought, well, we were looking for someone to help us. We couldn't find anyone. And we thought, well, we should create that company. We have the background to do so with his background in operations and mine in HR.
That's a really nice story. I can tell you a personal story. When I was 6 years old, this is not going to be a long story, I promise, and it's very relevant. My father came home from work one day, and we all sat around the dinner table, and he said, "Okay, I don't know what you think about this family, but we're going to move to Saudi Arabia." And I was like, "Wow, Saudi Arabia, that's cool. Where is it? What is it?" And my dad said, It's very much like in the desert. There's lots of sand and sand dunes, and I'm not sure if we're going to be living in a tent. So, yeah, no kidding. And he had this job, and he had this contract, and they sent him like an itemized list of everything that he had in the house. And of course, this is 1980, I think it was 1979. So it's before. Well, it was before nearly everything, really. You couldn't send an email in those days. So they sent it by I think it was a very early facsimile. So apparently my dad came home with these reels and reels and reels of paper that were really expensive in those days to send a fax. And it had like 1 teaspoon, three knives and forks, 1 cup, on this. And my dad was like, this must have cost them like 500 euros or 500 pounds in those days to send this. So, and when we arrived, we were met by this chap, a colleague that Dad eventually worked with, and we arrived there, and I was still expecting to literally be driven to a tent. I had no idea. Luckily, it wasn't like that, but yeah, it was very interesting. So,
that's also a good lesson, though, and sometimes it is all about expectations. And if you have those low tent expectations going in, everything is going to be great from that point on, so that's good too.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way to look at it, isn't it? Yeah, because it is risk. I think one of the most stressful things that people can face, or one of the most stressful things, is moving and having no real possessions.
There's been studies about it being second only to like the death of a family member.
Wow.
In terms of stress levels.
Yeah. For me, I've moved a lot. So for me, I find it's a time to sort of clean out the closet and get rid of things that you just don't use anymore and carry around with you. And, I don't, if I move from one place to another, I never use a container anymore. It's just a few suitcases.
I've never used a container myself. Yeah.
I did
Only ever
once, and it
on the
was,
plane.
oh,
I will say though, my last move, I had some regrets. I regretted the artwork that I left behind.
okay.
That was a regret. But yeah, I mean, international moves, if you're all about that minimalist lifestyle, it's good for that.
Can be refreshing. It's like a rebirth, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, it is.
a new life, a new chapter. Well, not really a new life. It's a new chapter, and I think it's exciting times. Or at least I've always found it exciting. We're very settled at the moment, but after maybe 6-10 years, I start getting a little bit itchy feet. Things have become a little bit easy. You start to feel like you need a little bit of a challenge. But I'm getting too old now to move around too much. But who knows? Who knows?
I do think it's interesting. I think you see some common personality traits in folks who are interested in the first place in moving to another country. Certainly it's adventurousness. I mean, I think that's expected. But I think there is something interesting about people who are excited about just learning. Like
Mm-hmm.
you are forced to be so far out of your comfort zone that you are learning new things every single day. And I think for some people that really appeals.
Yeah, I find like an excitement of being on my own. Not in terms of like loneliness, but being new in a new environment, and that you have that excitement, how to adapt, who to speak to, how to, and then once it becomes too easy, I get a bit sleepy. I want another challenge. I don't know whether that comes from just constantly you get used to, you get a feeling of being very motivated by change and by moving, and you've done it in the past, and you realize how exciting it is and how positive experience it can be. Have you ever had anybody that's had negative experiences moving abroad, and what should people look out for?
Yeah, of course. Well, look, I mean, in a big international move, things aren't going to go perfectly, right? Like there's always going to be at least something that kind of gets you down. Um, and even if it's a small thing, it might have an outsized impact on how you feel in the move. Um, I like to say, as we're talking also about, you know, the experience of moving, kind of the emotional side of it, no matter how many moves you do, I think, in my experience, even on my sixth international move, it's a roller coaster of, I think you go into a honeymoon phase shortly after you move where everything is beautiful and shiny and new and exciting.
Hmm.
And inevitably, at some point, you're going to run into enough friction that you kind of fall down into a little pit of despair.
Yeah.
And it always happens. Like even if you know it's coming, if you've had experience with it before, like there's going to be a pit of despair. Now, what can trigger it? Um, Loneliness, which is a part of, you're trying to build a new community. Bureaucracy is a really common one, especially moving to Portugal. So just frustration over getting an IMA appointment, for example, or the fact that it's just your bank is driving you crazy, and you have to go into the bank in person multiple times to get a simple transaction done. I've definitely seen that from various folks. But there's going to always be this little pit of despair. And hopefully it's brief. And then the idea is you're going to have more ups and downs than you're used to in life when you're adapting to a new country context. And the ups and downs will gradually over time kind of, settle out into a more constant state. And the goal is that constant state is above where you were before. But yeah, that's the way I always see it.
Yeah, interesting. I've actually, I've thought about this. And I know exactly what you're saying about the little trough after
Mhm,
the peak. And I've always sort of said to myself, well, when everything is going really well, perhaps
mhm.
that's the time to relocate somewhere else before you get to the frustrations. But then that sounds terrible. That sounds like I'm very flippant
Well,
and just
I think that would be every 6 months, don't you think?
yeah, quite possibly. Well, I do. You see exactly what you're saying as well. There is definitely a honeymoon period here. like a romance until you start getting your first tax bills and your first scratching your head going, what's this all about?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I have lots of friends who've lived in LA and they've moved to Portugal, then they've moved back to LA, and then they've moved back to Portugal again, and then they now sort of live a dual existence between both places. And one of the things that they say is that they get very frustrated with the customer service here.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
hear that from
different, right?
Americans a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say it's adapting to a culture that is not efficiency focused, right? US culture is so focused on how can I get you to spend money? How can we get things to be done as quickly as possible? Oftentimes, without a human on the other side of the conversation, right? Like, let's just get this done. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. You move to a place like Portugal and it's relational. It's people don't care about efficiency like that. People care more about personal connections and relationships, and that's prioritized. And so, yeah, they're going to be like 5 holidays in June. And if you can't get things done, that's too bad. Spending time with family and the holidays are more important.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's very nice to think that it's relational and you need to know the right people to get things done here. That's certainly
That's
for
true.
sure. And you need to integrate. You need to integrate with the locals because it opens doors for you. And learning the language as well is, I always believe, is one of the keys to opening those doors.
Absolutely.
Both to community, you talked a little bit there about loneliness, to also, I mean, luckily I've never really felt lonely anywhere because I've always sort of had this sort of method where I join a gym or join a jiu-jitsu club or martial arts club, and then you already instantly have this bunch of people that you've got something to talk about. And
That
then
is the
from
move.
within that, yeah, exactly.
Or, if you don't have good grasp of the language yet, you're maybe doing something that doesn't require a lot of language to still be a part of a group.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great.
it's a good idea. And there's lots of stuff happening in Lisbon. Like I interview a lot of groups here on Podcast Portugal. One of them is sort of getting these communities together in Lisbon, and they're just literally switching off their phones. You have to put your phone in a box when you enter. And then you go
Yep.
in and you do crafts and you do painting and drawing and talking. You're not allowed to do any sort of it's just somewhere to go and relax and switch off, but kind of switch on another area of your mind. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
doing
no, I
very well.
really love that. That's great. I was speaking with a client the other day. It kind of brings up another thought about this is an overly simplistic comparison, but she was describing how moving from the United States to Portugal was like she was giving up some of these modern conveniences that she was used to with her life in Boston, things like next day delivery on Amazon, for example. Um, but it meant that she was experiencing a lot more. So she was giving up the convenience for having to go to 3 different shops to get what she needed, or 5 different shops, or however many shops, and then meeting all of the shopkeepers. I thought that that was kind of another example of how, sometimes when you're moving to another country, again, especially for these Americans that we often work with, um, it is kind of like going back to a little bit of a different time, at least in the
Mm,
US, where, yeah, you had to, like, physically go to the store and talk to people, and how that does create some friction. It's challenging, it's not as comfortable, but then in the long run, you're happier from the interactions and the learning that comes from it. Yeah, just, it's something that I see commonly across a lot of our clients.
yeah, and I think, look, you always have to go into this. It's not the be all and end all, and what I mean by that is, like, just because you're moving to Portugal doesn't mean you can't move from Portugal to somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Once you've achieved your citizenship, and we can start talking about that a little bit as well. It's sort
Mhm.
of the nitty
Yeah.
gritty of the D7 and the D8 visas and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But once you've got that passport, it's a gateway to living anywhere else in Europe. So you don't need to feel like, okay, if Portugal, you live here for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, if it's not the place or you enjoy it, there's no. I know plenty of people that live 2 or 3 months here, 2 or 3 months somewhere in Italy, a couple of months in Monaco. And that's that's the way they do it. There is no rules to how you should live. You don't need to just go put foundations somewhere like a tree and grow roots and that's it until you die. You know,
absolutely.
and with that Portuguese passport, you can literally go anywhere in Europe. It gives you so much freedom and choice to travel, to settle, to do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's it, huh? I think a lot of us who do live in a lot of different countries, that's what we're looking for in large part too. It's that sense of freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you learn so much. I think once you go to a different country and you spend a long period of time, it's almost like a different type of traveling. It's like a long traveling, and you absorb everything that country has to offer. You learn everything. You learn about the people. You learn about the culture, the music, the food. I've been here 15 years, and I'm still learning things now. Part of the reason doing the podcast is talking to so many fascinating people and learning so much about the place and area where I live.
Yeah. And, it also allows you to look back and interrogate some things that maybe you assumed were normal or you assumed were just the way that everyone does things. When you expose yourself to different cultures and different ways of life, you can kind of, I don't know, make more intentional decisions about some parts of how you want to live.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So let's look at some of the nitty gritty. Let's have a
Do
look.
it.
So
I love the nitty
yeah,
gritty.
the nitty gritty is obviously some things that can get a little bit complicated, and it's a lot of the reasons why people sort of seek your services. So for listeners unfamiliar with the process, what do you think are the key differences between the D7 and the
Mhm.
D8 visas, and what does it mean, D7 and D8? What are these things?
Yeah. So D7 is the passive income visa for Portugal. So this is where you're qualifying for the visa using a pension, let's say, or rental income or dividends, a passive means. The D8, well, technically it's not called the D8 anymore. It's just the digital nomad visa. They've changed the way that they use that number, but the digital nomad visa is when you are making income from employment, able to work remotely. So employed by a non-Portuguese company, but allowed by that company to work in Portugal, or perhaps you're a business owner or a contractor able to work for yourself and you have clients or a setup for your business where you can work from Portugal. So those are the differences in how you could qualify. Now, the financial amounts that you need are also different. So the D7 is tied to the Portuguese minimum wage for this year in 2026. It's €920 that you need to show that you're bringing in via passive means every month. So that is one of the most approachable passive income visas you can find out there in the world today. It's really a pretty low threshold. For the digital nomad visa, it's higher. So it's 4 times that, 3,680 euro per month. And I will say for both of those visas, if you're not just moving on your own, but you want to bring along dependents, family members, then you do have to add some. So those dependents are going to be basically adding a percentage of the minimum wage, all tied to the minimum wage here. So if it's an adult dependent, you add 50% of the minimum wage again. If it's child dependent, you add 30% of the minimum wage again to that income requirement.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And sort of what how do people go about it? Do they apply online, or do they recruit your services that sort of pulls it all into a package? Or what
Yeah.
if I'm sitting here, I'm in the US, or now actually the UK, now it's not part of Brexit. Um and if even if the UK is the same, I don't know anymore. What do I do?
Yeah.
I'm looking and thinking, I need to research this. I need to think about moving to Portugal. What would be
Yeah.
the sort of first step? I'm guessing the visa, right?
Yes, it typically is where people's minds go first. I mean, when it comes to breaking that down into, okay, I've decided I want to move to Portugal. I know I need a visa to live in Portugal. Then what? Um, well, first of all, I would say likely you're going to want some help with getting that visa. It is a complicated process, not really just because of the requirements list, but because the requirements list changes frequently and varies depending on where you're applying from. Because unfortunately, there is not a standardized system where you can just apply online. You also cannot apply from within Portugal for these visa types. You have to be in another country. You have to apply from the country where you're currently a legal resident. So, if you're in the UK, that's going to be Edinburgh, Manchester, or London. If you're in the US, it could be, anywhere from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., um, uh, all different consulates or offices called VFS global offices across the world. You can't just do it from within Portugal. And each of those offices can interpret the rules slightly differently. So that's why it can be really useful to work with professionals who are used to navigating these requirements. Um, look, depending on the visa type, we might be talking about something like 12 different documents to 15 or 16 different documents per person applying. And there are, a lot of details with each one of those. Um, Now, when it comes to, I've decided, great, I want to get a visa. I want to move to Portugal. I want to become a permanent resident, or I want to look towards citizenship in the future. I would suggest really starting the process 6 to 12 months before you want to move. And the very first step is to get your NIF, your tax ID number in Portugal. That kind of has to come before all the follow-up steps of, let's say, opening a bank account, signing a lease agreement, or actually applying for the visa itself. The NIF is a requirement. So that's really where we start.
Okay. And what is, if I was to travel from the US and come to Portugal just to do a reconnaissance,
Yeah.
what is the sort of tourism, what's the maximum amount of time you can stay? And does that affect your visa application?
So it doesn't affect your visa application. The tourist visa is 90 out of 180 days in the Schengen area.
Okay.
So basically, that means you can stay about 3 months. And then if you stay that full duration of time that you're allowed, you then have to leave for 3 months before you come back, essentially. Um, you can do that before your visa appointment, before you submit your documents. We even have clients who, at times, there have been very long wait times to get the visa approved. So they might, you know, attend their visa appointment and then go to Portugal for a little bit of like apartment setup, for example, in the country before they get approved and travel back to pick up that visa. So that is all available to you.
Okay, so someone can actually travel to Portugal on a tourism visa. They can do a nice reconnaissance for 3 months. They could even buy a property, I guess. If they have a NIF, they could buy a property. They could then come back and sort out their visa situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You
Mm.
can buy a property with full protections under the law in Portugal even before you get residency status. Yes, that's definitely an option.
Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know. That's good to know. No, it's good for other people to know. I don't need to know that. But and sort of what are the sort of common, what's the documentation firstly you need, and what are sort of the application errors do you see most often with visa applicants?
Mhm. Yeah, sure. Okay, well, let's just talk about, I'm not gonna, running through a list of 14 documents is gonna be kind of boring,
It's
but
14 documents,
I'll
right?
hit the
Okay.
highlights.
Yeah.
Um, the big ones are going to be your criminal background check
Mhm.
because it requires an apostille, which I think people consistently underestimate how long it is going to take to get this background check and then get it apostilled. So the
Sorry, can
background
you?
check would be like if you're living in the United States, it would be from the FBI. If you are in the UK, it would be something called the ACRO. So a formal background check from the government. And then you have to submit that document once you receive it, the results, back again to get what's called an apostille. It's essentially an internationally recognized verification that this document is valid, kind of like a notarization, but internationally valid. Um, and so that's the one that trips the most people up because it can take, easily 6 weeks
Okay.
to get that pulled together. So you really often need to do it even in anticipation of your appointment before you are scheduled.
Yeah,
It also,
I actually did one for because I was considering about doing the citizenship. I haven't quite done it yet, but I got the that criminal records check, and I think it was only valid for 6 months. So when I came around to the final
That's
moments, like,
exactly right.
yeah, I was like, okay, now I'm going to submit all the paper. Then I looked at the thing. I was like, oh no, it's already invalid. I have to go through all that again. So there's no way to sort of have it
Oh.
valid for longer, is it?
No, unfortunately
Yeah.
not. No, we have to be really careful about the timing of that one, and that's a huge pain, I know.
Mm,
Um, yeah. And I will say also, really importantly, this has just been a development in the past few weeks, but Portugal is really cracking down on these background checks. So if there's something on your background check, I really recommend working with a professional because you're probably going to run into some speed bumps. Technically, the requirement is that if there's something on your background check, it can't be something that would lead to a year's worth of jail time in Portugal. Like if you had committed that crime or been convicted of that in Portugal, it can't lead to more than a year's worth of jail time. But there are lots and lots of people who have very minor infractions that will appear on their background check, say 20 years prior. Um, and right now, the government is even cracking down on those. So you need to be quite attentive.
yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I guess I can see the point in that, but I also sort of think, well, if you've done your time, then that you should earn the right to, um, have that cleaned off your record in many ways. But yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want lots of criminals with
No,
coming
of
into
course
Portugal,
not. I
but
mean,
and I can
it's
understand.
absolutely a valid requirement. I think the thing that is sad is that you do see a lot of people who have had kind of misunderstandings or like things that were even we've seen cases where things were even expunged or not people were not convicted, but it will show up on their background check anyway because that is standard in the United States at least. um, and even those types of things, sometimes they run into speed bumps. So I just like to say if there's anything that shows up on that background check, even if like, oh, that wasn't, that was dismissed later, I'd recommend working with somebody.
Okay, good to know. Start Abroad has maintained 100% approval rating, so congratulations to you guys.
Thank you
Um,
so much. We take
but
that very seriously. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. What do successful applicants do differently, do you think?
Well, I think the first thing is probably just prior planning and preparation. Like I said, 6 to 12 months really is the sweet spot of when we want to start preparing and bringing all those documents together.
Yeah, I think the preparation and planning, of course, is got to be important. Somebody who's very organized.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and look, I mean, it does depend on where you're applying from, but the requirement in a lot of places is also to have a long-term rental or a purchase property, basically a long-term place to live, before you even apply for the visa. So what I do see, when you're making that kind of commitment up front, the people that tend to be the happiest with what everything looks like when they actually arrive are the folks who have managed to make a trip in
Mm,
advance of applying for the visa and really scouted out Portugal themselves to get a sense of, what's the best place for them to live. And they feel pretty confident about that as they go into the visa system.
yeah, definitely. Listen to the podcast as well. We interviewed people from all over Portugal talking
Yeah,
about
exactly.
moving here, relocating here, and I'm always waffling about different places and nice places to live, expensive places to live, opportunity places to live. Um, you know, Portugal's immigration system now, it has gone through many changes. I've heard from many people it's actually got quite a little bit better. They're starting to make improvements, both in technology and efficiencies. Um, but what should people know at the moment about AIMA? AIMA is the new organization and the residency process today.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago now, SEF became AMO, which is the Agency for Migration, and is a part of this transition that has now been happening for a couple of years. There have been a lot of new processes implemented. Actually, a brand new one, even a month ago, less than a month ago, when it comes to payments. So I will say, I think that AMO is really implementing a lot of really beneficial new systems to streamline the process, make it all a bit easier for us. But at the same time, through the implementation of those new systems, there have been a lot of hiccups and some challenges and some delays. So, it depends on when you're speaking to me, what those delays might look like. They're getting better, I will say right now, but the big one that everyone has complained about in the past was just getting the secondary appointment once you get to Portugal. So the way the visa system works is you apply for and are granted a visa based on this initial application that's done via an appointment in your current country of legal residence. You move to Portugal, and then you attend an appointment in person in Portugal to finalize the process. You get your fingerprints taken, you get your photo taken, you get your residency card issued. Just getting that appointment scheduled for a while was extremely challenging. And there were a lot of people that were kind of caught up in this transition period who weren't able to get an appointment for a very long time. It was very frustrating for a lot of folks. Luckily, I think we're really through that. But now EMA is instituting new processes, which I think will be good in the long run. But in the short term, can be confusing for folks.
Yeah, it tends to be that sort of adaptation of new
Yeah.
processes that get a little bit confusing and gives a little bit of space for things to go a bit wrong and people don't really know what to do. And it's frustrating when you can't call somebody or what, in that case, when they're dealing with you, they can call you and you can deal with the stress.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we could call EMA, which I will say does require calling repeatedly every day for days on end.
Yeah.
But eventually you do get through.
Yeah, I've been through it. I think just to get I had a piece of paper for a long time, a residency. It was just an A4 sheet of paper that I had perhaps for 10 years. I had that, and I made the application to get the proper residency card, and that meant having to go to different interviews, and yeah, but I got it. But yeah, you just have to keep pushing. You just have to keep on it, and I don't like to do things like that. I'd rather not have to do that. I don't really like to have my face scanned on a card on a database somewhere. I'd much rather not have all of that stuff. But I know that you have to have it because it's an illegal requirement. But but when it's difficult to get as well, it's just like, oh no, I really don't have to go through this.
I mean, when you're dealing with government bureaucracy, I think it's two things. It's patience and persistence in equal measure. Yeah, patience and persistence.
Yeah, exactly, and not get too annoyed with it. Why do you think having local support during the AIMA appointment is so valuable? I know. I think when I had I used someone to help with my not the DVLA, the Motor Institute.
Sure.
To get my driving license, I had to give up my UK driving license, and I had another piece of paper for a year, which meant I couldn't hire cars anywhere in the world, which was really annoying at the time, because they were taking a long time to organize the passports, and I had this guy, this office, this bureau, and he had somebody's contact, a relative or a cousin of his, that literally worked inside the office building there, in part of the bureaucracy. And there was a massive queue outside, and she came out and got me and said, "Oh, your appointment's here." So I literally went I felt really bad because I was right had to walk into the front of the queue, when you're at a nightclub or something and there's a massive queue and the doorman lets you in.
And you're the VIP.
Yeah, exactly. But it was all because I paid some guy to do it, and I felt, I wonder how how legal this all is.
What we're talking about with systems being a little bit different and culture being much more focused on the relational aspects, right? It is true. It matters who you know. And when you show up and you're new in a country, you probably don't know very many people. So it's definitely helpful from that perspective. Like if you're going to an AIMA appointment, to have someone there who not only knows how the office operates and what they ask for and how to navigate that office, but also knows the people who are going to be looking over your documents, processing your applications. That can be very helpful. And then there's just the basic utility of having a translator. That can be really valuable just to make sure nothing is misunderstood. If there's anything in your documentation that isn't standard, you really want to be able to explain it. Because again, it's the type of system where things can vary depending on the person you meet with, the conversation you have, and their judgment in a lot of these systems. So you want to be able to have that conversation in a fluent way, explain yourself well, and that's going to just
Be
make it
nice.
much more likely that things are going to go smoothly.
And be very nice, and be patient and be polite
Yeah.
because it doesn't get you very far in Portugal if you're not.
No, it does not at all.
Yeah. I know that whenever I go anywhere to anything to do with anything official, I always go with like a massive box file full of every single paper that I've ever needed in Portugal. And there's always something that I haven't got, and I was like, I've got to go back to the car to get this or go back home to get that document. But you never know what paper. There's always some magic piece of paper that's required.
My Portuguese friends do tell me that no matter what, if you go to any, government related appointment, they're always going to ask you for at least one thing that you do not have. Like, yes, you bring
Exactly.
everything, but they're always going to find one thing that they want to ask you additional.
Yeah, it's actually quite useful to get very, very adept at using the finances system, the online system. If you can navigate that very well, and you can download any of these pieces of paper quite easily from there, it's very useful.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tip. And actually, on that note, it's very funny because in Almonsil, which is I don't know how much you know about Portugal, but it's in the Algarve near Lule. There is one of the roundabouts. Portugal is very famous for making big sculptures and sculptural roundabouts. They always seem to find some money, and it's a big rubber stamp. So I thought that that illustrates Portugal quite funny, with the administration.
They do love
Exactly.
stamps. Stamps on all paperwork. If you can get a stamp, everyone's going to
It's
be
very
happier.
interesting. It's very old school, let's say. So
It is paper everything. Some of my clients are shocked. They're like, "What do you mean I can't submit this
yeah,
digitally?" I'm like, "No, it's Portugal.
yeah,
It's got to be
interesting.
paper."
Well, we need to give people jobs. So. Stampers
Yeah,
is
exactly.
a very good job in Portugal, obviously. Why is having, you know, one topic that generates a lot of discussion in Portugal is the citizenship timeline. What is happening and how is it affecting expats or immigrants, should we say?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a recent change. There's a lot of discussion and debate in government about making the change from a 5-year citizenship timeline to a 7 or 10-year last year. So that change was implemented a couple of months ago now, at the beginning of May. And it means that if you're coming from a CLP country, so a Portuguese speaking country like Brazil, then you can get citizenship after 7 years now. And if you're coming from another country, so most of the countries that we work with, we're talking about Brits, Americans, Canadians, etc. It's now 10 years to get your citizenship in Portugal. Now, I will say, this puts Portugal on the norm for the EU. It's now no longer the place where you can get an EU passport more quickly than just about anywhere else. It's pretty standard. It does also not change the permanent residency timeline. So that is still at 5 years. So it's something for folks to look forward to. I think the really tricky part about this are the folks who moved to Portugal or started this process before that change was implemented, because they're left saying, "Oh, well, what about me? Can't I get grandfathered into the old system? I already have my residency, but I'm a couple years out from qualifying for citizenship if it was the 5-year mark." Unfortunately, the way that the law was initially implemented or written, it is not allowed to be grandfathered in unless you've actually already submitted your citizenship application. However, there is at least one big lawsuit that's going to be going through the courts in the near future, which contests this. So we will see
Yeah,
how it
on the
plays out.
grapevine, I think it's looking quite positive for people. I think that they'll organize it
Yeah.
somehow. So housing can be one of the most stressful parts of relocation. There is a lot of comments that Lisbon is becoming one of the most expensive cities in the world, almost. With it,
Oh, that seems like a lot to
yeah.
say, but
Well,
okay,
I don't
yes.
know from when you're talking about sort of square meter. Well, I don't know. Yeah, how that could compare to somewhere like Tokyo, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I am
Yeah.
understanding that people do find it hard. Depends on your budget, of course. Finding property. What
Yes.
mistakes do you think you see sort of people making when searching for rentals?
Yeah. Well, I think those are two good observations or questions. I mean, one, yes, the cost of rent in particular in Lisbon, the cost of property if you're purchasing has gone up very quickly in the past 3 to 5 years or so. It really has gone up quite significantly, and it is very noticeable, or notable, I should say, when you compare it with that minimum wage that we were just talking about, right? So it is right now very challenging to live in London if
Lisbon,
you
Lisbon.
are making a lower salary by
Not
Portuguese
Lisbon.
standards.
Yeah, you said London. No problem.
That
Yeah, yeah.
was
No,
no,
yeah, I
obviously was
understand.
yeah, it is very challenging. Also,
Yeah, I'm
probably
sure
in
it is.
London
I
too.
think
You know, that's
well, any
definitely also the
major
case in London.
city which is starting
Um,
to be
yeah,
up and coming and people want to live, it's just the natural order of things. It
yeah,
becomes more
yeah.
desirable. Um,
So that's absolutely the case. It has been the source, I think, of a lot of frustration among the Portuguese Lisbon population. Absolutely true and valid. Um, Mistakes in the rental process. So, two big things that I would tell anyone. If you are searching for a rental in Portugal, please get someone to visit it in person that you trust. Don't just rely on, reaching out to a listing online on Idealista and watching some videos. So that's number 1. Get someone independent who you trust to visit that property in person. Number 2, please get your lease reviewed by a lawyer. Get a legal lease review. Once you sign it, it is going to be legally binding. You want to be sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. You want to be sure that it meets Portuguese standards for a lease and you're not signing anything you don't understand.
Mm.
So those would be my two big things. Please, 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 no matter what, do that. Even if you're not working with a company that's going to help you and make sure that everything goes the way it should, those are two
Yeah, and
absolute essentials.
it almost goes back again to sort of that thing. Why not come out here and just sort of visit for a while and try to at least make some inquiries or find some contacts out here that you can rely on to go do it
Yes.
for you and to
Even
explore other areas. If Lisbon, is not quite in the budget, there is sort of Sintra, there is places or which are quite near to Lisbon.
Oh, there are amazing towns in the greater Lisbon area, and then, of course,
Yeah,
all throughout the country. We have more and more people moving to Stubal.
yeah.
Oh, it's so popular these days. Coimbra, all over.
So
Yeah.
it's good. Do your research, but do it in person. Take a nice 90-day holiday and come and travel around Portugal. It's such hard work.
And even if you can't afford the 90 days, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, you can do
2
2
weeks,
weeks.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. So
That's what I hear from my American clients who have
yeah,
limited
no, I
vacation time.
understand if you
2
have
weeks.
limited vacation time, but such an important decision,
Yeah.
I think. So
It's
beyond
very
visas and
yeah.
housing, what are the most overlooked practical tasks people need to complete before arriving?
Yeah. Well, I always think about what are the most important things for those that you're moving with? Kids and pets. So if you're going to be moving with kids, obviously schooling is going to be a big decision. You want to have a good understanding of all of your options, make a good choice for your child or children. And then pets. If you have especially larger dogs, how are you going to get them to Portugal in the best way possible for them and for your family? So those are two really big ones. Then we run into the, general for everybody. I think it's that are you going to be the minimalist with 5 suitcases on the plane, or do we need to figure out some shipping solutions in a container? Or something in between. So shipping is really critical. Then we have, potentially if you're interested in buying a car, when you get to the country, that's quite important, as well as the driver's license exchange. Lots of different things for your situation. We like to say that every move is unique. You know, it's not a one size fits all move process. And so there are going to be parts of this move that are going to be more important for you or things that you're going to want to focus on. And I will say that's where we really specialize is getting to know our clients and helping them make the right decisions and handle the things that are going to be important for them in this really big international move.
And for families, what considering a move,
Mm.
what concerns come up most frequently, do you think, from your clients?
Yeah. Well, I mean, schooling, of course. And it depends on the age of the kids, what's going to be the right solution. Do we wanna do immediate Portuguese immersion in public school? Is it gonna be a better fit to do an international school where the language of instruction is maybe mostly in English? So there's a wide range available in terms of pedagogies and costs and all kinds of criteria. Um, I also do hear concerns about safety. And I will say a lot of those concerns are just in general without knowing very much about Portugal, because Portugal is a very safe country overall. So usually I get to be the bearer of really good news in terms of, oh yes, no, trust, like this is where you're moving to is very safe. Um, and then it's also about space, especially people who are moving from, a country where they are used to having a lot of living space. There's got to be some adaptation sometimes. You're moving into a city apartment in Lisbon. How are we going to fit 3 kids and the dog in a smaller
and
apartment?
but if you look to outside, you can buy, we've got a mont, we live on a mont, and we've just got a bunch of land, a gigantic house, which we rattle around in. It's really, you can buy a lot of space if you look outside of Lisbon, and I
Yeah.
fully recommend it. And a lot of the public schools are great. And I've interviewed quite a few educationalists on Podcast Portugal here. So we have a couple of people from the Lisbon. We had the director of the Lisbon school on here. That's a beautiful new
Yes,
school. We also had Tim
it
Vieira,
is beautiful. I
who
walked by.
operates the Brave Generation education system. So yeah,
Mhm.
if you're worried about education, have a little listen to their podcast. They're really very, very good with talking about.
Absolutely. We have clients with kids in
Oh,
both of
brilliant!
those.
Okay,
Yes.
nice. Yeah, they looked amazing. The Lisbon looked just beautiful, and I think
I haven't gone inside, but walking by it, it's also in a
yeah,
really great
and
location.
I love
Yeah.
the concept between Brave, behind Brave Generation. I think it's really cool. It just
Mhm.
depends what your kids will adapt to. And my son, my team, he's half Portuguese,
Mhm.
half English, but he goes to the public school, and it's just brilliant. It's really great. He loves it. He goes on a trip every week.
It is fantastic for so many families,
It's just
really.
wicked.
Yeah. The resources and what's available
Yeah.
there can be really
I mean,
great.
I do try to teach him a lot of things in English at home, so it's just how much you want to keep your past life in many respects. So where can
Yeah.
listeners learn more about Start Abroad and begin their planning and sort of their relocation
Yeah.
journey? What would be your call to action? The website, startabroad.com. Would that be the first port of call?
That's it.
Okay,
That's
fantastic.
it. And if you wanna learn more about what visa is gonna be right for you, or what our process is, or if you're just ready to make the move, and if you're in that window of 6 to 12 months out, hop on a free 15-minute consultation with us. We'd be happy to talk you through the process, kind of figure out how we could work together, and answer any questions you have about
That's
moving
great.
forward.
That's it. That's 15 minutes, and they're going to speak to you, and they're going to feel super confident and super excited that they can get such a stressful part. They can share that load, because it is a load. And I think finding a professional that can make that transition and reduce the stress is so important. And I really appreciate your
Yeah,
time
that's right.
going through it with us, Anna, today.
Thank you so much. It was such a
Yeah,
pleasure
you
to meet
too.
you, Justin, and thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
If,
Yeah. Oh, if any of your listeners just want someone in their corner as they're making this big life transition, please
yeah.
reach out to us.
And
We would love
actually,
to
I
help.
will leave a little note at the end of this, because you are offering our audience a little bit of a discount off the service package. So
Yes.
I will give them the code to use at the checkout. So thank you very much to that on behalf of the audience.
And
Anna, a pleasure. And I look forward to speaking to you again. If you have any other news sometime in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. And all
would
right.
love to. Thank you so much. It's been such a
Yeah,
lovely
you too.
conversation, Justin,
Thank
and have
you.
a great
Take
rest of your
care.
day.
Thank you very much. This is
Bye.
Justin West from Podcast Portugal. What a lovely conversation and super helpful people from Start Abroad. This episode of Podcast Portugal is sponsored by Start Abroad, a full-service relocation company helping individuals and families move abroad with confidence. From D7 and D8 visa applications, or should we say the digital nomad visa, to rental searches, Portuguese bank accounts, NIF and NISS registration, and settling into a new life in Portugal. Start Abroad provides dedicated support every step of the way. Podcast Portugal listeners can book a free 15-minute consultation and receive 5% off any service package using the code PODCAST PT. That's podcast PT, all in caps at checkout.
Walking past another conductor makes me wanna build a fusion reactor. Starting just with the basic switch, connecting poles and energy. Mom says focus on geography, all the things I can learn with that machine. I need some fuel, I need a monster now. I'm the last to come, the cloud. Won't you go start